Hello everyone and welcome. If I asked you right now what you need to do to change your life, to get fit, to build a business, or simply to find more peace, what would you say?
Most of us would probably talk about making a massive leap. We dream of the overnight success, the radical transformation, the one giant decision that changes everything. But today we are going to dismantle that myth. We are going to explore a book that argues the exact opposite. The book is called Atomic Habits, written by James Clear. Since its release, this book has sold millions of copies and became a Bible for high performers, CEOs and athletes. Why?
Because it stops telling you to dream big and starts teaching you to start small. Atomic small. Let's start with a story that James Clear uses to set the stage. It's about the British cycling team. For about 100 years, British cycling was mediocre at best. Actually, mediocre is being generous. They were underwhelming. They had won just a single gold medal at the Olympic Games since 1908. In 10 years, no British cyclist had ever won the Tour de France. They were so unimpressive that one top bike manufacturer actually refused to sell them bikes because they were afraid it would hurt their brand's reputation if people saw the British team riding their gear. Then in 2003, everything changed. They hired a man named Dave Brailsford. Brailsford didn't come in and say, "We need to train 10 times harder," or "We need a miracle." He believed in a concept he called the aggregation of marginal gains. It's a fancy way of saying, let's just get 1% better at everything. They redesigned the bike seats to make them more comfortable. That's a small change. They rubbed alcohol on the tires for better grip. They switched to electrically heated oversorts to maintain ideal muscle temperature. But then they went further. They tested different massage gels to see which one led to the fastest muscle recovery. They hired a surgeon to teach the athletes the best way to wash their hands to avoid catching a cold. They even figured out which pillow and mattress led to the best night's sleep for each rider. These sound like tiny, almost irrelevant details, but when you put them all together, the results were nuclear. 5 years later, at the Beijing Olympics, the British team won 60% of the gold medals available. 4 years after that, in London, they set 9 Olympic records and 7 world records. That same year, Bradley Wiggins became the first British cyclist to win the Tour de France. This is the core philosophy of Atomic Habits. It is the math of success. Here is the equation James Clear wants you to remember. If you get 1% better each day for 1 year, you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done. Conversely, if you get 1% worse each day for 1 year, you decline nearly down to 0. We often dismiss small changes because they don't seem to matter in the moment. If you go to the gym today for 20 minutes, you won't see a six-pack in the mirror tonight. If you study Mandarin for an hour tonight, you won't be fluent tomorrow. We make a few changes, we don't see a result, and we slide back into our old routines. But habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just like money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. They seem to make little difference on any given day, and yet the impact they deliver over the months and years can be enormous. James Clear introduces a concept called the plateau of latent potential. Imagine an ice cube sitting on a table in a freezing room. The room is 25 degrees. You slowly heat the room. 26 degrees, 27, 28. The ice cube is still there. Nothing has happened. 29, 30. 31, still nothing. Then you hit 32 degrees. The ice begins to melt, a 1 degree shift, seemingly no different from the temperature increases before it, unlocked a huge change. Complaining about not achieving success despite working hard is like complaining that an ice cube isn't melting when you heated it from 25 to 31 degrees. Your work was not wasted, it is just being stored. All the action happens at 32 degrees. This is why people give up. They are in the valley of disappointment. They expect linear progress, but reality is exponential. You have to survive the valley to see the compound interest kick in. So how do we actually do this? How do we stick with it long enough to hit 32 degrees? First, we need to fix a fundamental error in our thinking, the obsession with goals. Society tells us set big goals, visualize the finish line, but consider this. The winner and the loser in any competition have the exact same goal. Every candidate wants the job. Every team wants the championship. If the goal is the same, the goal cannot be the thing that differentiates the winners from the losers. James Clear says, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. A goal is the result you want. A system is the process that leads to those results. If you're a writer, your goal is to write a book. Your system is the writing schedule you follow each week. If you ignored your goal completely and focused only on your system, would you still succeed? Yes. In fact, focusing too much on the goal can actually hurt you.
It creates a yo-yo effect. You run a marathon, you cross the finish line, and then you stop running because the goal is achieved. We want sustainable change. And to get that, we need to go deeper than systems. We need to talk about identity. This is, in my opinion, the most profound part of the book. Picture an onion. It has layers. The outer layer is outcomes, what you get, like losing weight. The middle layer is processes, what you do, like going to the gym. The deepest inner layer is identity, what you believe. Most people try to change their habits by focusing on what they want to achieve. This is outcome-based habits. I want to stop smoking. Imagine two people resisting a cigarette. When offered a smoke, the first person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." It sounds reasonable, right? But listen closely, they still believe they are a smoker who is trying to be something else. They are hoping their behavior will change while carrying it on the same beliefs. The second person declines the cigarette by saying, "No thanks, I'm not the smoker, it's a small difference." But it changes everything. It signals a shift in identity. Smoking was part of their former life, not their current one. True behavior change is identity change. You might start a habit because of motivation, but the only reason you'll stick with one is that it becomes part of who you are. The goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is not to learn an instrument. The goal is to become a musician. Why does this matter? Because the more pride you have in a particular aspect of your identity, the more motivated you will be to maintain the habits associated with it. If you're proud of your hair, you'll take care of it. If you identify as the type of person who never misses a workout, you don't need willpower to go to the gym. It's just who you are. So the formula for success in Atomic Habits isn't "I need to achieve X." It is a two-step process. 1, decide the type of person you want to be. 2, prove it to yourself with small wins. Every time you choose the salad over the burger, you aren't just eating healthy, you are casting a vote for the identity of a healthy person. Every time you write one page, you're casting a vote for the identity of a writer. You don't need to be perfect. In any election, you don't need 100% of the votes to win. You just need the majority. Once we understand that we are building an identity, not just chasing a number, the next question is, how do we actually program these habits into our brain? How do we design a life where doing the right thing is easy? James Clear breaks this down into the 4 laws of behavior change, and that is exactly where we are going. Next, part 2, the architecture of awareness and desire. Let's start with law number 1, make it obvious. Most of the time, our bad habits are invisible to us. You walk into the kitchen, see a cookie, and eat it without thinking. You sit on the couch, pick up the remote, and turn on the TV without deciding to do it. It's automatic. James Clear tells a fascinating story about the Japanese railway system to explain how to fix this. It is known as one of the safest systems in the world. If you ever watch a Japanese train conductor, you will see them doing something odd. They point at everything and say it out loud. When the train approaches a signal, the operator points at it and says, "Signal is green." When the train leaves the station, the operator points at the timetable and says, "The time is 3 years old." This is called pointing and calling. It looks silly, but it reduces errors by 85%. Why? Because it raises the level of awareness from a non-conscious habit to a conscious one. You can do this in your own life. If you are trying to stop eating junk food, don't just mindlessly grab a cookie, point at it and say out loud, "I am about to eat this cookie. It is full of sugar, and I don't need it." It sounds crazy, but speaking it out loud breaks the automatic loop. It forces your brain to acknowledge the action. Once you are aware, you need a plan. Many people think they lack motivation when what they really lack is clarity. You say, "I'm going to work out more." That is too vague. When, where, how? James Clear suggests using an implementation intention. The formula is, I will behavior at time, in location. Don't say, "I will read more." Say, "I will read Spanish for 20 minutes at 6 p.m. in my bedroom." There is no ambiguity here. You are giving your habit a time and a space to live. But we can take this a step further with my favorite technique in the whole book, habit stacking. You already have habits that you do every single day without fail. You brush your teeth, you make coffee, you take a shower. Habit stacking is simply tying a new habit to an old one. The formula is, after current habit, I will new habit. After I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute. After I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into my workout clothes. The old habit becomes the trigger, the cue for the new one. You are piggybacking on neural pathways that are already built in your brain. Now, let's talk about environment design. This is the secret weapon of law number 1. If you want to practice guitar, But your guitar is locked in a case in the back of your closet. You will never play it. If you want to drink more water, but the water is only in the kitchen, you won't drink it. Environment design means redesigning your space. So the cues for good habits are right in your face. If you want to play guitar, buy a stand and put the guitar in the middle of your living room. If you want to drink water, fill 3 bottles and put them on your desk, your nightstand and your coffee table. Visual cues are the greatest catalyst of our behavior. Make the good cues impossible to miss, and the bad cues impossible to see. If you want to stop playing video games, unplug the console and put it in a closet after every use. Don't rely on willpower, rely on design. Now that we have made the cue obvious, we move to law number 2, make it attractive. This law is about dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical in the brain that drives desire. Here is the interesting thing, you get a spike of dopamine, not when you experience the reward, but when you anticipate it. The anticipation of the holiday is often better than the holiday itself. We need to use this to our advantage. We need to make our hard habits feel exciting. How? By using a strategy called temptation bundling. This concept comes from an engineering student in Ireland named Ronan Byrne. He loved watching Netflix, but he knew he needed to exercise more. He was an engineer, so he hacked his stationary bike. He wrote a computer program that would allow Netflix to run only if he was cycling at a certain speed. If he slowed down, Netflix would pause. He bundled something he wanted to do, watch Netflix, with something he needed to do, exercise. You can do this too. Only listen to your favorite true crime podcast while you're doing household chores. Only get a pedicure while you're catching up on overdue work emails. You're using the want to pull you through the need. There's another powerful way to make habits attractive, and it involves the people around us. Humans are herd animals. We want to fit in. We imitate the habits of 3 groups: the close, the many, and the powerful. If your best friend eats fast food every day, you probably will too. That's the close. If everyone in your office works late, you will feel pressured to work late. That's the many. But the most actionable advice here is to join a tribe where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. If you want to get fit, don't just try to exercise alone in your basement. Join a running club. Join a CrossFit gym. When you surround yourself with people who identify as athletes, it becomes much more attractive to act like an athlete. You don't want to be the odd one out. When the habit you want to build is the normal behavior of the tribe, change becomes easy. So, to summarize the first half of the 4 laws, we stop waiting for motivation. Instead, we design our environment to make cues obvious. We use implementation intentions and habit stacking to clarify exactly when and where we will act. Then we make the habit attractive by bundling it with things we enjoy and by surrounding ourselves with people who already have the habits we want. But what happens when it's time to actually do the work? What happens when the habit feels hard, difficult, or boring? That is where law 3 and law 4 come in. That is where we learn to make it easy and make it satisfying. Part 3, mastering the art of showing up. Welcome back. We are now at law number 3, make it easy. Human behavior follows the law of least effort. We naturally gravitate toward the option that requires the least amount of work. If you want to get fit, but your gym is 20 minutes away, you probably won't go. The friction is too high. James Clear distinguishes between 2 things, motion and action. Motion is planning, strategizing, and learning. Action is the behavior that delivers an outcome. If I outline 20 articles, that's motion. If I actually write 1 sentence, that's action. We love motion because it feels like we are doing something, but we are really just preparing to get something done. We get stuck in motion because we are afraid of failure. To break this, we need to reduce friction. We need to make the good habit the path of least resistance. If you want to draw more, put your pencils and sketchbook on top of your desk, not in a drawer. If you want to eat healthier, chop up the fruit and vegetables on Sunday so they are ready to eat during the week. But the most powerful tool for making it easy is the 2-minute rule. The rule states, when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Read before bed becomes read 1 page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat. Run 3 miles becomes tie my running shoes. You might think, this is stupid, what good is reading 1 page? But the point is not to read 1 page. The point is to master the art of showing up. A habit must be established before it can be improved. You cannot optimize a habit that doesn't exist. If you can't learn the basic skill of showing up, you have little hope of mastering the finer details. Standardize before you optimize. Once you put on your running shoes and step out the door, that is the victory. That is the 2-minute habit. Whatever happens after that is a bonus. Now let's assume you've done the habit, you showed up. How do we make sure you do it again tomorrow? This brings us to law number 4. Make it satisfying. The first 3 laws increase the odds.